In the previous episode, we witnessed a tense exchange between Carlisle and Gabriel, filled with undertones of defiance and deep-seated beliefs. Carlisle, showing a rare sensitivity, tells Gabriel that he does not wish to make Asha uncomfortable and firmly requests that Gabriel refrain from blessing them in their private chambers. Gabriel, acknowledging the delicacy of the matter, concedes that such an arrangement might indeed be unsettling for any woman. However, he sharply reminds Carlisle of their sacred obligation to produce the next Imperial heir. Carlisle, with a sharp edge to his voice, challenges this notion, asking what exactly Gabriel means by obligation. He boldly asserts that perhaps Gabriel, like other male priests, is blind to the weight imposed on women by the Church since ancient times. Unwilling to accept these impositions without question, Carlisle further demands to know if such mandates are truly inscribed in the ancient scriptures of God. Gabriel's expression tightens, his composure barely masking the fury simmering beneath. How dare Carlisle, a mere human, question him, a priest entrusted with divine mission by God himself? Yet, after a tense pause, Gabriel masterfully reins in his anger. With a serene, almost unsettling smile, he responds with saccharine condescension, praising Carlisle's pure heart for caring so deeply about the word of their Lord and Savior. That night, as Asha steps into Carlisle's bedroom, he greets her with a gentle question, concern evident in his voice. "Are you feeling any better?" he asks, noting how little she had eaten during their earlier meal. Asha hesitates before admitting that she hasn't been entirely comfortable, not since the high priest announced that they'd need to perform the blessing ritual every day starting next week. "I thought it was only going to be 3 or 4 days a week," she murmurs, frustration lacing her words. Carlisle's expression softens with a mix of sympathy and dry humor. "I doubt Gabriel is thrilled about it either," he replies casually. "I can't see a single reason why he'd want us to have a child so badly." His calm demeanor does little to ease Asha's growing unease as she feels a headache brewing. As Asha quietly grapples with her thoughts, Carlisle reaches out his hand toward her, his tone steady but firm. "I'll be counting on my wife," he says, his words carrying both reassurance and expectation. "At the very least, we'll have to start sleeping in the same room this week." Asha blinks in mild surprise at his words but quickly regains her composure. With a faint smile, she shakes his hand, mirroring his gesture, a silent agreement passing between them. Without another word, Carlisle turns away and heads toward his bed, ready to sleep. The bed, large and inviting, is more than spacious enough for the two of them. As he settles in, he assumes she will join him. Surely, she wouldn't choose the discomfort of the sofa or a chair over the ample space next to him. To Carlisle's surprise, Asha walks past the bed and settles herself on the sofa, wrapping up to sleep there instead. He notices her choice and instinctively wants to object, but he hesitates. "She won't listen to me anyway," he thinks, swallowing his words. Yet, as the minutes tick by, he finds himself unable to stay silent. Turning toward her, he finally asks, "Are you not feeling cold there?" Asha shakes her head, offering a brief, "I'm fine." Carlisle studies her for a moment, unconvinced. She's lying, he decides. She must not trust me enough to share the bed. As if reading his thoughts, Asha denies it outright. "It's not that," she says quickly, her cheeks tinged with a faint blush. "Then why?" Carlisle presses gently. "We're already sleeping in the same room, so why not the same bed?" Embarrassed, Asha hesitates before replying, "I've already warmed up on the couch. I don't want to move now." Her voice wavers slightly, betraying her shyness. Carlisle doesn't push further. Instead, he lets out a resigned sigh and remarks, "Fine. But tomorrow, you'll take the bed." His tone leaves little room for negotiation, though there's no malice in it. The next day, Gabriel approaches Asha with an unexpected request. He tells her he wishes to bless the castle, claiming that old structures like this one can harbor negative energy. He insists the blessing is necessary to ensure no malevolent spirits interfere with her fortunes, especially on the battlefield. Sensing her wariness, Gabriel adds smoothly, "If you don't trust me, you're welcome to accompany me. Should you find my actions suspicious, you can report me directly to Carlisle." Asha shrugs off his attempt at reassurance, casually agreeing to the suggestion. She decides to guide him through the castle herself. As they walk through the grand yet weathered lobby, Gabriel asks, "Would it be possible for me to perform the blessing from the castle's highest point? It would make the process quicker and more effective." Asha nods at the practicality of the idea. "That makes sense. I'll show you the way." A few minutes later, Gabriel's curiosity surfaces again. "I noticed on my way here that Pervaz has no temple. Is there truly none in this region?" Ashia's expression darkens slightly as she explains, "Before Pervaz was assimilated into the empire, diplomatic relationships were strained. Afterward, we couldn't afford to build a temple because of the constant invasions." Gabriel hums thoughtfully before commenting, "Then the people here must not know much about God, I assume." Ashya's reply is swift and firm, her voice tinged with pride. Don't let the lack of a temple mislead you. If you could count the number of times the people here have prayed with all their hearts, you'd find us second only to the capital itself. For years, prayer was all we had, our only hope during countless hardships. Gabriel's expression softens as he speaks with a rare empathy. I will pray for all those who have passed, that they may find their way to God's side, even if it might be too late for them. Ashya pauses at his words, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. For a moment, she thinks that Gabriel doesn't seem so bad as a person, but she quickly brushes it off, attributing his comment to the habitual compassion of a priest. As they reach the highest point of the castle, Ashya gestures to the vast view before them. From here, you can see the border, she says, her voice tinged with a quiet pride. Gabriel steps forward, his gaze falling on the distant, desolate lands. The forgotten lands are so close, he remarks thoughtfully. Have you ever heard of strange energy coming from there? Ashya nods, recalling her father's warnings. My father used to say that the savages and beasts from the forgotten lands are contaminated by that energy. Gabriel's curiosity sharpens. Do you believe it could be dark magic? Ashya's voice grows more serious as she replies, I do. People say that dark energy blankets the entirety of the forgotten lands. It's everywhere. Gabriel hums in thought, then shifts the conversation. By the way, Carlisle must owe you a great deal. You protected him, and I imagine the Pervaz army suffered greatly in the conflict. Ashya's eyes narrow slightly, her tone firm as she counters, that's not quite accurate. The savages were far more resourceful this time, they even used machinery they've never had before. Gabriel senses the unspoken accusation in her words and meets it head-on, his voice calm but distant. Carlisle does have many enemies, he says lightly. I pray that nothing like that ever happens to Pervaz again. Ashya doesn't respond, instead turning to lead the way back down. As they walk, Gabriel's gaze falls on a room that stands out, its well-worn state indicating frequent use. What is this room? He asks curiously. Ashya glances at the door, her expression softening. It's a prayer room. My mother used it often, and after she passed, the rest of my family kept the tradition alive. Now, it's just me. Gabriel's eyes widen slightly, surprised. You've been a devoted believer all this time. Ashya's voice is filled with genuine emotion as she replies, I believe in God with all my heart. If there were no God, how else could it be possible that someone like me is the spouse of Crown Prince Carlisle? Gabriel watches her closely, seeing the pure faith radiating from her as she speaks. A pang of something long forgotten stirs in him, and he silently reflects on her words. In the privacy of his mind, Gabriel prays. Lord, let the path I'm walking be the right one, yet a shadow of doubt lingers in his heart as they continue their descent. In the capital, Viviana, the emperor's mistress, receives momentous news, she is pregnant. The doctor, brimming with excitement, assures her he will inform his majesty at once. But Viviana, with calculated sweetness, urges him to deliver the news quietly, lest it overwhelm the emperor. As the room clears, leaving her to rest, a shadowy man in a coat lingers. His voice drips with disbelief. Are you truly trying to pass off another man's child as royal blood? Viviana's eyes flash with defiance. And what would you have me do? This is the only way to keep His Majesty's favor, even for a little longer. The man, though still hesitant, ultimately agrees to protect her secret. But you must never let the truth see the light of day. Viviana, however, has bigger concerns than the pregnancy itself. Her thoughts turn to the Empress. How will she react, she wonders. Could the Empress see her as a threat? Or is she as clueless and complacent as Matthias, oblivious to the shifting sands of power? With her ambition burning bright, Viviana resolves to bide her time. When Carlisle returns from Pervaz, my child will secure the throne, and no one, not even the Empress, will stand in my way. In the dimly lit Pervaz castle, Ashya steps into Carlisle's room as she does every night. But tonight is different, her nerves are on edge. It's the night of their union, and Gabriel is set to give his blessings for the conception of an heir. Sensing her unease, Carlisle speaks in a calm, steady voice. I know it's embarrassing for you, he says softly, but it shouldn't take too long. Bailey will signal us before the priest arrives. Ashya nods, trying to steady herself. She forces herself to think practically. It's just an act. All I have to do is fake some heavy breathing. I can do that, right? As the moment draws closer, Carlisle and Ashya move to the bed to prepare for their charade. Carlisle, noticing her tension, teases her lightly. I must apologize for not waiting in bed for you earlier, he says with a mischievous smirk. Ashya flushes at his words, her flustered state catching her off guard. When did I start reacting like this around him, she wonders, struggling to mask her embarrassment. After a moment, Carlane grows more serious. Do you still remember what to do when the priest comes? He asks, his tone now firm. Ashya straightens and nods. Yes. We act breathless and call each other by our first names. Just then, Bailey's signal reaches them. The priest is approaching. The room falls silent as Ashya and Carlane exchange a glance. As soon as Bailey signals the priest's arrival, Carlane instinctively pulls Ashya into his arms. When Gabriel enters the room, Ashya immediately begins her performance, her voice trembling convincingly with breathless whispers. Carlane, confident earlier, now finds himself frozen, unsure of how to match her act. But then, as his eyes meet Ashya's, something in him shifts. Forgetting the pretense, he leans in and kisses her, the action unplanned yet strangely natural. Gabriel, completing the blessing, retreats from the room with a grimace, muttering under his breath about his ears being defiled by the couple's intimacy. Yet, as he descends the hall, a peculiar thought nags at him: could Carlane truly have feelings for Ashya? He quickly dismisses it. Impossible. An arrogant prince like Carlane would never fall for a provincial country lord. Instead, Gabriel convinces himself that Carlane's motives must be purely pragmatic. He's clinging to this marriage for financial support from the capital. Gabriel reasons. This leads him to a calculated decision: it might be wiser to align myself with Ashya of Pervaz rather than Carlane. Recalling the sincerity of Ashya's faith, particularly in the praying room, Gabriel feels a pang of empathy for her. While these thoughts churn in his mind, Gabriel begins to wander the castle, scouting a discreet location to secretly draw a dark magic circle. Back in Carlane's room, Bailey signals that the priest has left. Carlane immediately praises Ashya. You were incredible, he says, his voice tinged with admiration. Ashya returns the compliment, thanking him for his own efforts, though Carlane chuckles nervously at his lack of contribution. Do you think Gabriel was deceived? Carlane asks. I hope so, Ashya replies softly, before heading to the couch to settle for the night. But before she can reach it, Carlane catches her wrist, pulling her back into his arms. Stay in the bed, he murmurs, his voice firm yet gentle. Ashya stares at him, startled by the sudden request. Sensing her hesitation, Carlane quickly adds, you'll catch a cold sleeping on the couch. Reluctantly, Ashya agrees, lying down on the bed. To her surprise, she finds herself enveloped in Carlane's warm embrace. The morning light streams into Carlane's bedroom as he and Ashya share breakfast together. Between bites, Carlane glances at her and asks softly, do you like the food? Ashya nods, a polite smile gracing her lips. It's delicious. Relief washes over Carlane's face. I'm glad, he replies, his voice warm. His reaction puzzles Ashya. Why does he act so genuine, so husband-like, when no one else is around? Before she can dwell on it further, Carlane reaches across the table, takes her hand, and lifts a bite of her food to his mouth. You're right, he says with a playful smile, it is delicious. The gesture is romantic, and Ashya feels her cheeks warm. But inwardly, she steels herself. I can't let this sway me. If Carlane knew what I've been hiding, it could destroy everything. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Palace, Emperor Evaristo beams with joy upon hearing that Viviana is with child. This is wonderful news, he exclaims, basking in the moment. Empress Beatrice, ever composed, offers her congratulations with a serene smile. Evaristo nods, his excitement spilling over. I had hoped that you, too, might soon be blessed, Beatrice. You and Viviana both possess such admirable qualities. Beatrice maintains her composure, her smile unwavering. It is all in the hands of the gods, your majesty. Elsewhere in the palace, a maid informs Viviana that the empress has sent her a gift to celebrate her pregnancy. Intrigued, Viviana asks, is her majesty here to greet me herself? No, my lady, the maid replies. The empress sent the first princess, Josephine, and the second princess, Charlize, in her place. Viviana's brow furrows. Why would the empress send her daughters? It feels like an unexpected move, one she doesn't fully trust. Despite her unease, Viviana knows she can't refuse them. Composing herself, she instructs the maid, tell them I'll join them once I've finished preparing. Viviana, now meeting Josephine and Charlize for the first time, greets them formally. The two princesses smile pleasantly in return, exuding warmth and grace. Josephine kindly gestures for Viviana to sit. We heard the news and couldn't wait to come congratulate you in person, Josephine says, her tone sweet and welcoming. We also brought some presents. Please accept them, and don't feel burdened. Viviana, touched by their thoughtfulness, thanks them with a humble smile. I truly appreciate your kindness, thank you. Josephine, with a curious sparkle in her eyes, leans forward slightly. May I ask, what was the secret? We heard it wasn't easy for you to conceive, and yet here you are. We're also thinking of starting families in the future, and it would be helpful to learn from your experience. Viviana, caught off guard by the directness of the question, carefully responds, well, it seems that the medicine the Empress sent me was quite effective. Josephine's expression brightens. How wonderful, to conceive so quickly after starting the medicine, it must have been such a blessing. But Viviana begins to feel a rising discomfort. Noticing Viviana's unease, Josephine quickly apologizes. Forgive us if we've been too forward. We're just so amazed that such a medicine has been available nearby all this time. Shifting the topic, Josephine continues, our mother wanted to come herself to congratulate you, but she had other matters to attend to. Viviana, relieved by the change in conversation, smiles graciously. Please tell the Empress I appreciate her generosity. Despite her lingering doubts, Viviana convinces herself that perhaps she was overthinking the situation. The princesses seem kind and genuinely concerned. Little does she know, their pleasant smiles conceal hidden motives, and their questions were not born out of mere curiosity but were carefully crafted to gather information. In Pervaz castle, Gabriel prepared himself to look presentable for Ashya. He had planned to ask for her permission to use the private prayer room, but as he began to walk, a sharp pain suddenly seized his stomach. He collapsed to the floor, the pain overwhelming him. Gabriel quickly deduced that this might be a side effect of the black magic he had been using. Am I becoming a demon? He wondered, the weight of his actions sinking in. Was he treading down the wrong path, cursed by his beliefs? Just as he was lost in his thoughts, Ashya knocked on his door. Her voice was calm, but Gabriel's immediate concern was that she would recognize the symptoms. She had lived so close to the forgotten land, and he feared she would sense the truth. The pain intensified, and despite his best efforts to hide it, he let out a cry of agony. Hearing this, Ashya rushed inside, her expression filled with concern as she saw him struggling on the floor. Gabriel, are you okay? She asked, her voice gentle. Gabriel forced a weak smile. I'm fine, he said, though his pained expression betrayed him. Ashya wasn't fooled and offered to take a look at his stomach. Flustered, Gabriel quickly made an excuse. I can't show you. It's against my religion to expose myself to a woman. Ashya, not wanting to press him further, offered to call Carlin's doctor. Gabriel panicked, he couldn't let Carlane find out. Desperate, he pulled open his shirt and revealed his stomach to Ashya. Her eyes widened in shock as she saw the deep wound. What happened to you? She whispered, fear creeping into her voice.